r/ask Reddit. What's a fact you know that almost everyone is wrong about? The Mayans didn't disappear or go extinct. They still live in Central America and speak at least 24 different Mayan languages. The last Mayan city didn't fall to Spanish conquest until 1697. I work in a school and yesterday read a textbook with kids that said, although the Mayans disappeared, there are still people who claim to be Maya, speak Mayan, and practice the Mayan religion. It's like they're too dumb to read their own writing sometimes. They vanished without leaving a trace. Mayan culture is still alive and thriving today. I went to school with a Mayan, pretty uncommon in the UK as far as I'm aware, which of course meant lots of calendar jokes as the end of the world in 2012 was a thing since the early zeros. Robin Williams didn't kill himself because he was depressed. He killed himself because he had Lewy body dementia, a degenerative brain disease. His autopsy showed that he had one of the worst cases ever seen. His wife has confirmed that he had about 50 symptoms, and depression was one of the least intense. His best friend, who has a name I can't possibly spell, Bobcat Goldthwait, has also confirmed it wasn't depression or substance abuse that caused him to commit suicide. The article "The Terrorist in My Husband's Brain," it's a must read. This is really specific, but in most anatomy or biomechanics textbooks the ankle joint is classified as a second-class lever with the ball of the foot labeled as the fulcrum. This is incorrect as the system rotates about the ankle joint, not the ball of the foot. Therefore it is a first-class lever, not second. This right here is the hill I will die on. I often say, I'm not dying on that hill to express my apathy. I'm jealous you found your hill. Your very specific, very accurate hill. If you end up in a higher tax bracket, only the income above that bracket gets taxed at the new percentage. So say if 060k is taxed at 1% and 6080k is 2%. If I made 80k, only 20k is taxed at 2%? Yes, that's how it works in the US. Diamonds can in fact be shattered with a hammer. There is a difference between how strong something is and how hard it is. A defibrillator will not restart a heart. It will only stop fibrillation, VFib. Message is a natural substance. If you say you're allergic to message, you're allergic to tomatoes and cabbage and all kinds of natural food. Message is basically if people started calling salt sodium chloride to make it sound like a scary chemical, then started having allergic reactions to it. Bananas are a GMO. Lemons are GMO. Even more, they are GCO. They were created. So what you're telling me is that life didn't give us lemons, so humanity had to make lemons. While serving on an airfield, I remember telling a non-aviation friend that there was a plane coming in about an hour from then. He said that was impossible, because the tower is closed. I explained to him that flights come in all the time when the towers are closed. Even commercial jets are constantly landing without the tower being open. He absolutely blew up, said I didn't know what I was talking about, and that planes would crash all the time if that were the case. How could planes land without a tower? That just makes no sense. I even got my superior officer on the phone the next day to explain it and he still wouldn't believe it. I had 3 other people under me explain it to him and he still wouldn't believe it. I told him, dude, it's really simple to prove. The tower hours are posted. Check the last time a flight lands for the night and I guarantee it will be after that time. He did. It was. And yet he still refused to believe me. The sad fact is, people would probably riot if they found this out, because they'd think it was horribly dangerous. But it's been standard operating procedure for decades now and no one has even noticed. It hasn't caused a single crash. Believe it or not, it's actually safer to come in after hours because of the reduced traffic. This is not something that needs fixing. It's a very logical move. But I bet there are even people reading this that won't believe it. Unless you work in aviation, you probably don't know any of this. And there are plenty of unmanned airfields with runway lights that you activate remotely by letting your radio at a certain frequency. Today I learned some runway lights can be turned on using radio frequency. Those that can't do, teach is a mockery of a quote by Aristotle. Those that know, do. Those that understand, teach. And those that can't teach, teach Jim. Marie Antoinette never said let them eat cake. The first written account of this story is from 1767 and doesn't attribute the quote to her. She would have been 12 at the time and would go on to marry Louis XVI 3 years after this quote was initially published. The quote wasn't even about cake, it was about brioche. Well, that makes so much more sense. Who wouldn't start a revolution over that? Leaning your head back is actually worse for a nosebleed. Classmate in early high school was prone to nosebleeds. When he noticed one coming on, he just pulled out a tissue and held it under his nose. One time, a teacher told him to tilt his head back and he just said, "If I do that, the blood will clog up my nose and I'll have to go to the doctors." When I was younger, my dad always taught me not to tilt my head back because essentially the blood just runs down your throat and into your stomach. If the nosebleed goes on long enough, you'll throw up blood, which isn't pleasant for anyone. The amount of people I've argued with over this is astounding and I still don't even know if it's true. Ostriches don't bury their heads in the ground. It would also take at least 2 people to duck one, regardless of its health. That the air in your bag of chips isn't oxygen but nitrogen so that your product doesn't stale. It also keeps them from breaking to an extent. Long Island iced teas do not have iced tea in them. Or Long Island. A watched pot will actually boil. So long as you remembered to tune the stove on. My stove is in need of a tuning. It sounds terrible. Singers, almost universally, have a consistent tendency to sing slightly flat, not sharp. It's due primarily to lack of proper breath support and not because they have a tin ear for music. What is the proper breath support? Opera singer here. Proper breath support is based on a couple factors. First, your feet should be firmly on the ground, about shoulder width apart. You should be standing up straight, with your chest slightly lifted. Breathing should be done through the mouth into the diaphragm. The kind of breath where you feel your stomach expand as you breathe in. As you sing, you should be as relaxed as possible in the shoulders, neck, and throat. Singing power never comes from the throat. Instead, your diaphragm and obliques should firmly and consistently push the air out as you vocalize. The muscles themselves should feel firm as you push, flexing them. Note that this is a long push, not a jagged one. Doing this will allow you to sing or speak quite loudly for an hour or more without fatiguing your voice. Of course, there's a lot more to it: voice placement, resonant spaces, vowel shaping, but that's the gist. A monsoon isn't rain. It is a seasonal wind. Monsoon winds actually bring droughts at certain times of the year, and rain in other parts. It's a monsoon outside is not a correct thing to say when it's pouring. It's pouring rain as if it were a monsoon season in a geographical location known for increased rain during monsoon winds out there. Rolls right off the tongue, as if it were pushed by monsoon winds in an area without an increase in precipitation. That janitor is a low-class job. I'm a janitor and let me tell you, we make good money, amazing benefit. People treat you with so much respect. Comes the holiday, janitor gets a lot of gift from the people he cleans for. You're like a hero when there is toilet or bathroom trouble. Yeah, we make good money. I make more money than my friend who graduated university. Not only that, you have good co-workers. Nobody tells you what to do cause you pretty much have a routine. My uncle was a roofer for many years but finally got tired of inhaling tar and seeing co-workers get blown off of roofs in high winds. He got a job as a janitor with a public school district and stayed there for over 20 years. It was a union job, so he had good pay and benefits and he retired with a nice pension. Oh, and he used to bring home some cool things that had been left in the lost and found for over 30 days. That's how I got a nice marching band jacket from some school I'd never attended. Being schizophrenic does not mean you have multiple personalities. The myth of Narcissus. Most people think of it as he has fallen in love with himself, missing the distinction and nuance that he falls in love with the image of himself. This is important. If you run into any narcissist, you will notice the image they have of themselves is quite different from who they actually are. That it's a good idea to make furniture out of old pallet wood. No. That stuff gets treated with all kinds of pesticides when shipped overseas so you don't transfer any bugs or fungi. You don't want the gases emerging from it in your living room. I've even seen baby beds made from that shit. Your hair and nails don't actually keep growing after you die. Your body just loses moisture and fluids, making your body dehydrate and shrink up. This gives the illusion that your fingernails and hair appear longer. And it's what made people believe in vampires or witches when they'd look at people that had been dead for days and saw their hair and nails grow. Anastasia is not a Disney movie and she is not a Disney princess. More importantly, the whole thing was based on a real life scam. Picture a hymen. If you're thinking of a sort of sheet or membrane that covers the vagina and is popped by intercourse, you're wrong. It's actually a thin piece of tissue that only partly covers the entrance to your vagina. There are some cases where it does completely cover it. This is known as an imperforate hymen. Can cause some not insignificant health issues, and is very rare. It doesn't always hurt when it breaks. It's as likely to be broken by accident long before you have sex as it is to be pristine when you do, and sometimes it just disappears by itself without breaking. Either way, despite the idea that it's some sort of foolproof virginity test, whatever you define virginity as, anyway, it's still a pretty vague concept. It leaves a lot to be desired. The definition of an introvert. Not all introverts hate people and never want to socialize. Being introverted just means that social interaction is physically and mentally draining, compared to an extrovert, who gains energy through social interaction. We introverts still like to get out and have a good time and can genuinely enjoy it. It's just going to require some downtime after. Porcupines can't throw their quills, but you can throw a porcupine. Most people say that trees are good against climate change. They think trees will receive all the CO2, but actually we have to thank phytoplankton for making 80% of our oxygen, and for receiving CO2. There is not just fight or flight response, but also a freeze response. The muscles tense and the body goes very still. This explains why some people are paralyzed with fear and freeze instead of running or fighting back. It is very helpful for camouflage and hiding from predators with poor eyesight. It does not work so well when standing in front of a speeding truck. Shaving, waxing, plucking or anything of the sorts does not make your hair grow back faster or thicker. It just looks thicker because it is new growth. The only thing that will really change how thick or dense your hair grows is hormones. Carrots don't actually help your eyesight. It's British propaganda from World War II to try to keep the Germans from figuring out that they have radar. We only use 10% of our brains. Wrong, we use different parts of our brains at different times, but we use all of it. Using 100% of one's brain at once is actually relatively common. It's called a seizure. Instead of Luke, I am your father, Darth Vader actually says no, I am your father in The Empire Strikes Back. It seems that most people thought the Senate of the US vote on convicting the POTUS would be won simply by which side got more votes, but the Constitution states that a vote in this case must be a supermajority of 2/3 of the votes to convict. You cannot detox with bullshit diets and shakes. Your body has its own detox system. Any diet or sauna or whatever other bullshit you're doing doesn't work. I see posts in r/popular all the time that misidentify sea lions as seals. It's fairly easy to tell the difference if you see how they move on land. Sea lions can tuck their back flipper under them and walk on it, while seals are tubes and have to bounce shuffle along on land. If you're not consistent with disciplining your child, they will not understand the concept of consequences, and thus no matter how hard you try, they will continue to engage in the undesired behavior. You all would think that this is a basic thing for parents to understand. But nay. Little Braden Caden Drayden Graydon Hayden Jaden Peden or Caden is an angel, and it is no big deal that he pushed a kid off a bike and the kid who fell may have a concussion. As a teacher, I see far too many parents coddle their children. Sorry love, your son is pushing kids for literally no reason. We have tried every behavior management and discipline strategy we could think of, yet when you pick your son up at the end of the day and you sign the incident reports, you tell him not to worry and then give him candy and ACT like nothing happened. He's going to think what he did is okay and continue to do it. Parents, please believe your child's teachers when it comes to their behavior. We just want to have a future where the generation who is going to end up taking care of us isn't full of a-holes. that Romance languages are called that because they are somehow more romantic. No, they are Roman languages in their origin. Also, English is an Indo-European language. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.